Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peterisms, where I tell stories of my life and just little things that I have learned as I have grown into the person that I am today. And I was reading through comments that I got on my last couple videos, and I saw this comment come up. And first of all, I just want to say that you guys leave the most encouraging comments, and I really appreciate it. So many of you guys leave comments that will say things like, oh my God, this was the exact message I needed to hear today. And I just want to say I really appreciate that. I love this channel so much. I have so much fun on this channel. It feels like I'm having a conversation with one of my sober friends when I'm talking on this channel, or just, somebody that will, I don't know, ask me for some life advice, or, I kind of talk things out through this on this channel. And, I get done with these videos and I typically feel better after I get done with these videos too. And so I just want to say, I really appreciate your support on this channel. It means a lot to me. I love making videos on this channel. So it's funny because years ago, my husband and I, he had a work trip in, I think it was in Connecticut. It was a small town. And I can remember I went to this coffee store and I ran into this girl at this coffee store, and she was like, oh my God, years ago, this was like 4 or 5 years ago, if you guys watch my channel at the time. And she said, I would love to know if she still watched my channel. I'm sure she doesn't. I'm sure she doesn't watch this channel anymore. But she said, oh my God, you're Peter Monn. And I said, yeah. And she goes, I watch your YouTube channel. And I said, you do? And I always ask people when they come up to me, which happens very rarely, I'll say, what channel do you watch? And she said, I really only watch your Peterisms channel. And so I sat there and I talked to her for a little bit. She was so nice. She was so friendly. And she said to me before, we walked away and I sat there, I was uploading some videos or something on my computer at this coffee store. And I said to her, I said, I really appreciate you coming up to me. And she goes, can I ask you a favor? And I said, yeah, sure. And she goes, please don't ever stop making videos in your Peterisms channel. She goes, because they have helped me so much that even if you're just helping, because she's like, I know you don't get a lot of views on that channel. I said, I don't do it for the views. I could care less. And she was like, but even if you're just helping one person in each video that you do, you've helped one person that day. And I've always, ever since she said that to me, I've always thought about that. Every day that I film a video over here, I'm like, if my message of whatever I had to say, which typically everything that I say over here are just things that I've learned from other people, and so I'm just passing on things that have helped me in my life, that have been taught to me. I mean, it's not like I'm anything wise, and so it's not like these are, a lot of original ideas or anything. But if one person is helped by anything that I say in a video, then I feel like the video accomplished its goal for the day. And so, whoever she was out there, I don't remember her name, but I just want to say I really appreciate her saying that to me. She was like, just please continue to always make videos on this channel. And I always think about that. So anyway, I got this comment on my video. I think I've actually made a video about this, but I wanted to do a refresher one about this. So somebody commented and they said, hey Peter, I follow all your channels, but just joined this channel as I am starting therapy for the first time. Topic idea, how to know if a therapist is the right fit, and talk about what you should be looking for in a good therapist. Thanks for all of your wisdom. Okay, so I feel like it's very different for each person. So I don't think that I could get on here and say what you need to look for, what you don't need to look for, and things like that. I think it's so specific and so different for each person. But let me explain to you the process that we have gone through, or I have gone through, in finding therapists, and maybe it will help other people. I think there should be some questions that you have in finding somebody. And I have questions that are important for me. And so if maybe you can come up with your own questions. It's kind of like when you're interviewing anybody, right? Going to a therapist is kind of interviewing for some people. They may tell you that they don't feel like it's a good fit. That might be the same thing too. You might go to them and they might say, you need treatment from a therapist that has specialization in what area, right? And so when we first went to therapy, or when we first entered marriage counseling, I don't know, 7, 8, 10 years ago, something like that, there were a couple things that were really important to me. Now, the way that we started getting into therapy at that point was standing in this very bedroom. Alex said to me, we're going to either get divorced or we're going to go to therapy, but we have to do one or the other. And things have been bad for a while. So he was like, do you want to find a therapist or do you want me to find a therapist? And I said, I don't really care. I said, but it's really important to me that the person is very well versed on recovery, because I don't want to go in and be talking about like a 4-step inventory or use language like resentment. Like resentment has kind of a different meaning to people in recovery, from 12-step, like in a 12-step program, or fear, like when we talk about resentment and fear. Like those words, I think everybody knows those words, but they kind of take on a different meaning when you talk about them in a recovery way. And so I wanted to talk to somebody that, like if I'm talking to somebody that's sober, that speaks the same recovery language as me, certain words take on different meanings. And so I wanted to have somebody that spoke the language of recovery, somebody that was very well versed in recovery. That was one of the things that was the most important to me, okay? And so I also wanted to have somebody that was very, very like knowledgeable about marriage counseling, that was one of their focuses, was couples counseling and communication and things like that. And so we started going to him. You know, it's interestingly enough, like I've been to enough therapists in my life that I feel like right away, I kind of know. It's interesting because, and this is a bad kind of equation, but like, I can remember back in the day, I'm not good at dating people. Like I'm not ever good at like dating more than one person at a time. I never have been. I like to date one person, and if I'm interested in them, then I would want to stay in that relationship and be monogamous. And if not, then like, if this isn't going to work, let me go date somebody else kind of thing. I've never been somebody that's very good at that. And I've said this for a long time. Within 5 minutes of being on a date with somebody, I can tell you whether or not I'm bored to death and I'm done with the date, or if I want to spend the rest of my life with that person. That's the truth. Like literally within 5 minutes. It makes no sense to me when I will talk to girlfriends of mine, and they'll be like, yeah, I've been dating this guy for like 3 or 4 weeks. We've been spending every day together, but like, I don't really know. And I'm like, how do you not know after 3 or 4 weeks, right? Well, to some degree, therapy feels very similar to me like that, because therapy is kind of a professionally intimate relationship. And so you're going to be telling this person everything about yourself. For me, it kind of either just clicks right away or it doesn't click. Like I have sat down in front of people and I'm like, no, this isn't it, right? Or I've sat down in front of other people. I have friends of mine that will only go to men. I've had friends of mine that will only go to women. I think that's maybe a question, like what gender are you more comfortable with? It's interesting because I've seen a mix of both. I've seen men and I've seen women in my career of seeing therapists. Over time, what I have found, I don't know why, okay, but is that heterosexual men, I have a better relationship with them. You know, in recovery, one of the things that we say is when you're looking for a sponsor, you should not have a sponsor that's the same sex, okay? Or you should not have the sponsor that's an opposite sex if you're heterosexual, because that there might be like an attraction that comes in there or something like that, right? And then, or like you might like emotionally start being attracted to that person. So the recommendation is that as a heterosexual person in recovery, you have somebody of the same sex. If you're, and the same thing goes if you're gay, but if you're gay, you can also, like a gay man can have a female sponsor like I do. I didn't for years and years and years. I always had straight male sponsors, but I now have a female sponsor, and it's fantastic. I mean, I wouldn't say it's better or worse than my past sponsors. My past sponsors were fantastic. I do feel like there is something that I get with her that I never got with the previous relationships that I had with sponsors. But, you know, and lesbians can have straight men sponsors in recovery. And that's kind of, it's interesting because I'm reading this cozy mystery and they talk about that in there. And so that, because she says something in the book about like your sponsor is a male, but like, and so she figures out that the sponsor is gay or something like that. It's in this cozy mystery, Smile Beach Murder, that I'm reading. But anyway, I was like, oh, that's so accurate. I don't know, this person must be sober that's writing this book or something, because that's so accurate. But anyway, I feel very similar to that when it comes to finding a therapist and who you feel comfortable with. For me, I can get like my sponsor is very direct. I think there's an aspect of friendship to our relationship because we've been working together for so long. At this point, I think it's like more, and we've both been sober for so long that it's kind of merged more into like a friendship where she gives me suggestions and leads me and guides me. With therapy, I want somebody that it's not going to ever go to that area. With women in my life, I tend to develop friendships. And so it's important for me to not have the possibility for any kind of emotional attraction as well as a friendship that, to be friendly is one thing, but I want it to remain that professional relationship. So for me, I enjoy finding therapists that are heterosexual men. Like, that's important for me. And it's also important for me that they are in healthy relationships, because part of what I'm going for is somebody that's in a healthy relationship. And I think it's important for me that somebody can teach what they're in, if that makes sense. And I know across the board that people might not agree with that. They might be like, well, other people that are single, whatever, do you? But like for me, that's something that's important to me. And that's something that both of our therapists have had. And so when we found the first therapist that we had was extremely clinical. Like everything he said was in clinical terms. And I enjoyed that at the time. But when we found the last therapist that we had, which was somebody that we found after the accident, I wanted to find somebody that, yes, had a clinical background. Like our therapist, my therapist individually, and our couples counselor is the same person. He has a extremely intensive clinical background, like very intensive, has worked in clinical settings and knows everything, right? But when I'm talking to him, the rapport is very casual, and that's what I needed. I needed more of talk therapy. I needed somebody that I could just be like, let me throw you what's going on. What's interesting is that now we did a trauma narrative over the accident, and now we're doing a narrative over my history of being bullied and how it plays out in my life today. And so the narrative is a very clinical aspect that he's brought into kind of talk therapy. I also needed somebody that was compassionate but direct, would tell me what I needed to work on, would tell me what things like were obstacles and standing in the way, would call me out on my bullshit, but at the same time, I didn't need somebody that would be like, oh, Peter, it's going to be okay, but you need to do... I needed somebody that was going to be very direct at the times that I needed it and call me out on my bullshit. But at the same time, there were moments that I needed somebody to be compassionate to me that would be very compassionate to me. And those were things that I looked for. Those were things, I mean, I very much, when I went into finding a new therapist, and I talked to like, I think 3 or 4 people on the phone, I wanted somebody, this therapist has just as much of a working with people in recovery, knows recovery language, probably not as much as the last one, but he actually has several friends that are sober. So he knows the language that I speak. I mean, whenever I talk about inventory or whatever, he knows those terms. If I talk about a step, he knows what step I'm referencing. I could say like step 9 and he would know I was talking about amends. I wouldn't have to describe it to him. And the conversations are casual, but they're very directed in that, like, we always start off talking about, like, how's my week been? How's your week been? Things like that. That was what I wanted. Because the therapist that I have now, like, people all the time are like, you know, I've explained it with marriage counseling, like, related it to vocal counseling. We'll probably off and on go to marriage counseling for the rest of our lives. I probably will go to individual counseling for the rest of my life. I feel that today, as long as I can pay for it, it's something that greatly helps me and gives me a different perspective of what I'm going through. Why would I not go if I can continue to afford it? I'm not somebody that believes there has to be a problem to be fixed, to be in therapy. And that's why it's really important for me online to normalize therapy and counseling. I think the majority of people, like my husband and I, get into therapy because there's a problem that needs to be fixed. Like our marriage was not great. But I think that if you can catch it before then, I mean, that's not why we stay in marriage counseling today. That's not even why I stay in individual counseling. You know, a couple weeks ago, he said, what do you think you want to work on now? Well, we have been talking about how bullying, even though I've worked through it and steps and I've worked through it and, you know, inventory, I've worked through it in counseling and therapy, like it still plays out in how I look at the world today and who I was at 6 years old and people calling me names and how I was viewed and how I've maneuvered through this world ever since then. It's very similar to like a lot of people that stay in Al-Anon, which is a 12-step program for friends and family members of alcoholics. The alcoholic in their life may have died 30 years ago, but they still look at the world through the eyes of somebody that had an alcoholic in their life. And so they continue to stay in Al-Anon because of that, right? And so for me, it's very similar to that. And so he suggested, he was like, do you want to do a trauma narrative on being bullied? And I was like, he's like, I think that it would help you let go of all this kind of stuff and it would help you look at things in a different way. And I was like, absolutely. So we come up with new ideas and new projects of things to work on. I'm somebody that's very goal-oriented in therapy. I want something to constantly be working on. Our last therapist like gave us the 12 points of intimacy and gave us assignments to work on in marriage counseling. That was fantastic. Our therapist today does the same thing. He gives us assignments to do. You know, when we were on our vacation for our anniversary, we had like some fun assignments that we had to do. That's important to me because that gives me goals and that's something that I want. Those are things that I've asked therapists. Like, do you give assignments? Do you give goals? Are there things that we work towards? I don't want to just sit in here and be diagnosed and then continue to be like, I don't want to be with a therapist that's going to sit behind a pad and go, how does that make you feel? I want somebody that's going to have a conversation with me. I want more talk therapy. So when I was like interviewing people to work with, that was something that was important. I also think the cost is important. Obviously, we live in that world. I'm not gonna, I mean, our therapy sessions, I'll be honest with you, are $100 a session. I'm not going to pay somebody $300 or $400 for a therapy session. I'm just not. And there are people that can't afford $100. There's sliding fee scales online that you can find people. I always recommend friends of mine to, this is not sponsored, I get no spin off of it. I've always found our therapists through psychologytoday.com. If you go to psychologytoday.com, at the top of it, there is a find a therapist. You can put in your zip code and it will pull up all the people in your zip code. You can then go in and you can put in like filters like marriage counseling or anxiety or depression or LGBT or whatever you're looking for. If you want somebody that specifically just works with LGBT couples, it will siphon those people out and you can find those. There's also a lot of other good resources. You can talk to your family physician for a therapist. You can talk to, call up a local hospital. You can call up mental health organizations and ask them who they would recommend. There's a lot of different, avenues for that. If you want somebody that knows sober language, call up a local treatment facility and see if they have any recommendations and things like that. There's a lot of different ways to find people. I think to find a good therapist, you have to, number one, have a list of questions that you want them to answer and that certain things you want them to meet, certain things that you want, right? Like I wanted somebody that spoke recovery language. It wasn't very lengthy for me. I wanted somebody that would be more talk therapy with me, would be a conversation. That yes, the diagnoses would be important, but I didn't want it to just be about the diagnoses and a treatment plan and where are we at on the treatment plan. I didn't want it to be like that. I wanted to talk things through. I wanted to have a conversation and work through things with somebody. That was very important to me. It was also important to me that somebody spoke the language of recovery. Those were really the only two things that were important to me. Yes, I preferred if it was like a heterosexual man, but if it had been a woman or, I would have been completely fine with that as long as that person met the other two criteria and it felt like a good rapport. I feel like when I sit down with the person, like right away, I can kind of tell like this is going to be good or this is going to be good. I mean, I set limits too. Like I will say like the first couple months, my therapist kept on saying, and the other thing is don't be afraid to go like once or twice, and if you don't like it, go to somebody else. My therapist kept on saying to me the first couple months, if you feel like this isn't a good fit and you need to find somebody else, I can recommend somebody to you. But like the second or third month of him saying that, I said to him, listen, if you say it again, I am going to find somebody else because I feel very comfortable with you. I enjoy working with you, and it makes me feel like you're trying, because I'm not trying to get you to go find somebody else at all. I just want you to know that I will recommend somebody. My feelings won't be hurt. I said, okay, well, we've crossed that bridge. If I feel like I need to do that, I will bring it to you and say, I need to find somebody else. I said, is that fair? He goes, that's fair. I won't bring it up again. I said, okay. So, but we have a great working relationship. You got to find what works for you. If you go in and you meet with somebody and it doesn't feel like a good fit, find somebody else. Go through 5 people if you have to. This might be one of the most important relationships you ever have. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comment section below. If you have any suggestions, please leave it for other people. I love you guys so much, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.